Ukraine had already sent long-range drones deep into Russia, striking oil depots, military warehouses, and logistics centers far beyond the front line, but Engels was different. At 4:08 a.m. local time, 21 Liutyi drones were closing on one of Moscow's most important strategic bomber bases from several directions. Pantsir batteries covered the approaches. Pole 21 filled the area with electronic interference. Ground defense teams waited for anything that survived. The strike force had not been sent to hunt bombers. Its assigned targets were power, communications, maintenance facilities, and the equipment that kept Engels operating. No Tu-95 or Tu-160 had been confirmed outside before launch. Then the formation began to break apart. A Pantsir crew destroyed the lead drone. Pole 21 pushed others away from their programmed lines. By 4:12 a.m., one surviving Liutyi had entered the southern technical area. Its camera passed over service vehicles and the edge of an open apron. Then 4 propellers appeared beneath a wide wing, a Tu-95MS. Less than a minute later, the camera on another drone approaching from the north caught a pointed nose and swept wings, a Tu-160. The strike had been aimed at Engels itself. Now, only a handful of drones still had paths to the bombers. Base crews were already moving both aircraft, and less than 2 minutes remained before the opportunity disappeared. 4 minutes before the bombers appeared, the attacking formation still had 21 drones. Engels' defenders could see only 6 of them. The first group appeared west of the base at roughly 10 kilometers, spread low across the dark approach and moving at about 148 kilometers per hour. 7 more Liutyis were closing from the south, roughly 9.5 kilometers from the technical area. Another 8 approached on a wider northern route about 11 kilometers from the northern apron. The 3 groups were separated by distance and direction, but time to reach Engels within the same final window. The formation had crossed about 640 kilometers, but the air defense teams could engage only the part already visible. As the western group continued closing, a Pantsir S-1 crew locked the lead drone. A missile climbed from the western edge of the base, leaving a white trail across the dark sky. Seconds later, the Liutyi broke apart outside the perimeter. 1 drone was gone. But every 30 seconds, the western group held the defenders' attention. The southern formation moved another 1.2 kilometers closer. Then Pole 21 came online. Satellite corrections disappeared. 2 Liutyis drifted away from their programmed lines. A third began building an error that grew with every second they did not fall. Their inertial systems kept them moving on stored heading and speed. The surviving drones were becoming less accurate, not harmless. Engels' defenses had damaged the shape of the attack. But while the Pantsir crew continued engaging the 6 drones to the west, 15 more were still closing from the south and north. While the Pantsir crew remained focused on the western group, one of the southern Liutyis was already within 9 kilometers of the technical area. Its assigned target was a power distribution building beside the maintenance complex. During the final minutes of the approach, Pole 21 continued pulling the drone east of its program line. By the time it entered terminal guidance, the error had grown to more than 200 meters. The building was still ahead, but it was sliding toward the edge of the camera's narrow forward view. The Liutyi could not circle the apron, search the base, or return for another look. It had only seconds to use whatever remained directly in front of it. A larger utility building appeared beside the original aim point. The drone stayed on course. It crossed the perimeter, dropped lower, and struck a utility section serving the maintenance area. Power failed across part of the southern technical zone. Nearby communications became unstable. Emergency generators started within seconds. Base crews shifted radio traffic onto backup channels. Engels was still operating, but part of the system had been forced onto its second line. Then another southern Liutyi arrived. Smoke was moving across the apron. Fire crews and service vehicles were already heading toward the damaged section. The camera passed over a fuel truck, 2 maintenance vehicles, and the edge of an open apron. Something much larger stood behind them. At 4:12 a.m., the second southern Liutyi closed on the dark wing. 4 engine nacelles resolved beneath it. Then came 4 propellers and a tall vertical tail, a Tu-95MS. Its assigned maintenance building remained farther ahead, but the bomber now occupied most of the drone's narrow forward view. The Liutyi could not circle the apron, search the base, or return for another look. On the northern approach, another drone passed over a moving service vehicle. A pale fuselage appeared behind it. The next frames revealed a pointed nose and broad-swept wings. A Tu-160. 2 strategic bombers had now appeared inside 2 separate terminal views. That was the opportunity. Geometry was the limit. Only 7 surviving Liutyis were still approaching close enough to either apron to matter. Others had already been destroyed or pushed too far offline. One additional survivor remained committed to the technical communications route, with no room to cross the base toward either aircraft. Even those 7 could adjust only within their narrow forward views. Below them, ground crews were already moving toward both bombers. Tow tractors approached the aircraft. Every second reduced the time before both bombers could be pulled beyond the drone's final approach lines. Dividing the drones evenly risked failing against both aircraft. The southern approach offered the cleaner attack line. The Tu-95 had to be destroyed. The few drones still holding a useful northern line would get one chance to hit the Tu-160 hard enough to keep it on the ground. 7 Liutyis still had useful approach lines to the 2 bombers. 4 were already coming toward the southern apron with the Tu-95 inside their narrow terminal views. 3 others held the northern axis toward the Tu-160. None could turn freely across Engels. They could only shift their final aim points by a limited amount. One other surviving Liutyi remained locked on its original route toward the technical communications site. Its target had not changed, its tactical value had. The change became clear when the southern 4 held their lines toward the apron instead of the utility buildings beyond it. A Pantsir crew shifted its radar toward the Tu-95 approach. Cord teams repositioned along the likely low-altitude tracks. A tow tractor accelerated toward the bomber. That response strengthened the apron, but weakened another sector. That Liutyi continued closing on the technical communications site. Base command could not ignore it. Damage there could disrupt the coordination needed to move and protect both aircraft. Less than 2 minutes remained before the Tu-95 could be pulled beyond the southern attack lines. Concentrate on the bombers, and parts of Engels opened up. Stay spread across the base, and 7 drones with useful lines kept closing. The priorities had changed. The pressure on Engels had not. Now Russia began cutting those 7 attack lines down one by one. A Pantsir crew shifted onto the southern approach and locked the lead Liutyi. It was one of 4 still heading toward the Tu-95. The missile caught it outside the apron before its terminal camera could settle on the bomber. 6 useful attack lines remained. Then the interference around both aprons intensified. One southern Liutyi and one northern Liutyi began drifting away from the aircraft. Their inertial systems kept them flying, but the Tu-95 and Tu-160 slid toward the edges of their terminal views. 4 useful lines remained, 2 south, 2 north. On the northern approach, a cord team opened fire at close range. Heavy rounds tore through one drone's wing. It crossed the perimeter, rolled sharply, and fell away from the Tu-160 line. 3 remained, 2 on the southern line, 1 on the northern line. Elsewhere, a Liutyi that had never changed targets continued toward the technical communications site. With the Pantsir focused on the bombers, it reached the outer equipment and struck. The impact did not shut Engels down. Emergency power remained online and backup radios still worked, but several channels became unstable while base command was coordinating 2 tow operations, air defense fire, and emergency crews across separate aprons. The Tu-160 tow crew had to wait for movement clearance to be repeated over the backup network. The pause lasted only seconds. It was enough to keep the bomber inside the northern attack line. 3 drones, 2 strategic bombers. Less than 90 seconds remained before the Tu-95 could move beyond the southern attack line. At 4:14 a.m., the first of the 3 remaining Liutyis entered the southern apron. The Tu-95 was already being pulled across the open concrete toward the western side of Engels. Its tow tractor had gained only a few meters. Fewer than 85 seconds remained before the bomber could move beyond the drone's final approach line. A cord team opened fire. Heavy rounds crossed the apron and struck one side of the Liutyi. The drone rolled hard, dropped toward the concrete, then recovered just enough to remain on course. It struck beneath the Tu-95's wing, close to an inner engine. The blast rolled fire beneath the engine and threw burning fragments across the concrete. The bomber was damaged, but not yet lost. What mattered was the movement. The tow tractor stopped. Ground crews abandoned the connection. 2 fire engines turned in from the maintenance road as flames reflected beneath the wing. The first drone had not destroyed the Tu-95. It had stopped it from leaving. The second Liutyi arrived before the fire crews could establish a full response line. A Pantsir crew tried to shift back toward the southern apron, but the drone was already inside the final kilometer. It came in low through drifting smoke and struck the wing root. The second blast pushed fire inward toward the center fuselage. Burning fuel spread beneath the bomber. Fire crews swung their hoses toward the growing flames, but the tow crew did not return. The fire had spread beyond what the crews could contain on the apron. 1 drone remained. On the northern side of Engels, the Tu-160 was still being pulled away along a separate taxiway after the earlier communications delay. The final Liutyi came in low across the edge of the northern apron. Ground fire clipped one side, but the drone held enough of its approach to strike beside the rear fuselage close to the engine section. The Tu-160 remained intact, but the tow stopped. Technical crews moved in, and the bomber was taken out of immediate operations. Engels still had its runway. Its defenses had detected the raid, disrupted the formation, and destroyed most of the 21 Liutyi drones. But only a few survivors were needed to change the result. One Tu-95MS was destroyed. One Tu-160 was taken out of immediate operations. Russia would now face pressure to disperse its bombers earlier, protect exposed aprons more heavily, and commit additional air defense resources to Engels. The raid began as an attack on the base. It ended by showing that Russia could no longer assume its strategic bombers were safe deep inside its own territory. What decided the outcome? The staggered approach, the decision to keep pressure on Engels, or the final three drones? Tell us in the comments.